This is an R Media podcast.
My mum was very strong and she was very, she had to lead like a man in a man's world. Men are taught a lot about like a male is assertive, they're successful, they're ambitious. Those terms aren't used as favorably for women, unfortunately. There are a whole plethora that I don't need to talk about terms for women who are determined. They're bossy, they never call a man bossy, but they call a woman bossy. Why is that? Because she's the boss?
Marie Claire presents You're Gonna Want to Hear This.
Hello and welcome back to You're Gonna Want to Hear This. I'm your host, Georgie McCourt. Now, today's guest, Bianca Spender, was born into one of the country's most recognisable families. And in this conversation, Bianca takes us inside what it was really like growing up with the legendary designer Carla Zampatti as her mother. She also shares with us the lessons that she learned from watching her mother lead and why she felt she had to prove herself far beyond the family business. We go pretty deep in today's conversation. We talk all about mum guilt, and yes, she experiences it as well. Ambition, living with dyslexia, the decision to finally step away and launch her own label, and designing fashion that makes women feel just like themselves because she believes clothes should make you dance. We also talk about surrounding yourself with the right people and how that can change everything. Today, Bianca opens up about losing both of her parents within 18 months, facing skin cancer twice, and how grief has really shaped her perspective. These are all things that she once was very quiet about, but she's chosen to speak more openly about them over the last couple of years. This is Bianca Spender, and you're going to want to hear this. Now, Bianca, I want to go back to your childhood. I always like to start at the beginning. And you shared a room with your sister, Allegra. Oh. And I was laughing because I've got two girls. They don't share a room. They used to. But you put masking tape down the middle of the room to protect your side and especially your clothes. And so I read that you were really neat and Allegra was messy. Tell me about that room and about like why you put masking tape down the middle.
Well, so I'm a person who loves being really close to people. So sharing a room for me was a joy. Like I'm an extrovert. I always want to talk. If I'm reading a book, I want to share about this amazing story. And so I loved sharing a room with my sister, but I'm also quite a tidy person. And I really, I love everyone's spirit, and some people have a tidy spirit and some people have a messy spirit, and my sister is just born from Camp Messy. And what's so funny, like it makes so many things that she does so wonderful. Like she'll put these eclectic things together. She's everything from an incredible painter to an amazing reader. Like she's prolific, and so I know her mind just has so many dimensions, and the idea of order is just like so unnecessary in it. But for me,
I envy those people. I really envy because I'm such a neat freak.
Well, I
wish I could be more relaxed.
I can't actually find things if there's this pile. Like I'm always fascinated. My sister had this ability. I would laugh at school. I'd be like, she's younger than me, but she was always so bright. I would often ask her to help me with my homework, and I'd ask her this question about maths or anything, and she would find this one piece of paper in this ridiculous pile, which was all of the filing of all of her subjects. And for me, mine were all like filed by subject, by date, and then I had underlined like red was top heading, green was second, black was first, and then blue was fourth. And the way that my brain, I later learned it out in life when my son was he would have been 6 or 7, that he was dyslexic, and I learned then that I was dyslexic and mum was dyslexic. And so having order was actually a coping mechanism because I couldn't see things on a page, so I had to colour them and I had to file them and they had to have a place. And that's how I've kind of coped with lots of things. My team laughs. I'm like Excel spreadsheet and everything sort and filter, and it's my way to find things. But her brain, she can like open a book and find the quote she wants in the book on the page, and I'm like, I circle things and cross things and star things to try and remember or find where they are. So it was such a part of who she was, and I still wanted to share with her. And so my solution was, right, well, we just have this line and masking tape. We had floorboards. It was, of course, perfectly in line with one of the floorboards. And in that way, we could exist and really be ourselves. And I didn't want to nag or didn't want to tell her what to do, but also we could still share. So it's always been like, I'm quite different to my family, but I'm really always like about being close. So it's about finding a way that you can both coexist. And obviously that was my way. I was like, right, if I put this line, it all works.
I wonder if that could work in relationships.
Well, my partner's hilariously also messy.
I envy people who mess doesn't bother them because I'm the same. I need like order. I need to feel like my space is very ordered so that I feel in control and I can actually see things.
Like I literally can't
do
see
things
them.
and do tasks.
And yeah, like I can't cook in a kitchen that's messy. It's
No
like
way.
then I won't have enough bench space and I'll put it here and then I'll be like, where is that? Da, da, da. So, and I'm like actually a mad cook. Like I love getting like all the ingredients in the fridge and finding a different way to put things together. And I don't follow recipes. So I'm not rule bound, but to start with, I have to see what I have.
Oh my God, I'm the same. But I wish I could be a little bit more relaxed.
I know. I like all the best artists, whether you look at the studios of like Lucian Freud or Francis Bacon, and there are these boxes of photos that they're tearing through, or, like they clean their paintbrush on the wall, and there's it's all amazing to see. And I love how their mind work, but my brain is just not wired that way.
Neither is mine. Now, you've described growing up with Carla Zampatti as attending the School of Mum. I love that so much. What would you say were the most important lessons in that school that had nothing to do with fashion? Because we're going to get to the style lessons, of which there were many.
Well, it was so interesting because I didn't do really well at school. I didn't know I was dyslexic. I actually think I told my parents I thought I was dyslexic, and they said, "Don't be ridiculous." 2 working parents, they were like, "You're fine. You talk really well." And but I struggled writing, and I obviously had this ridiculously bright family and sister. And what was so good, she was like, school doesn't define you, like there is a whole world out there. So the first thing Mum really taught me was it isn't about the marks you get, it's about your curiosity, your engagement, and there's a whole world where you get to apply things that aren't theoretical, and you can find your place in that. And that is like, school's a long time. You're in school for 13 years. And if you aren't naturally a person who, like, I really struggled with all of the reading and all of the kind of structure of learning. I have to hear things rather than read them. I'm very oral.
Sounds like obviously very visual. Like I used to love mind maps at school because it was like, I just see things.
So if there's a visual element to it, or if there's a problem solving. So I did well in the sciences because it's not remember these facts. It's like, what to put all these elements together and what they create. But finding, I think it was just this idea, you'll find your place. Just be curious, be open, and say yes to everything, and you'll find your world. And I think that, we started working in the business at the age of, I was 9 and Allegra was 8. We'd had a nanny up to that point in time. And then my mum was like, you guys are old enough, let's have you come into work in the holidays, because she didn't want us sitting home watching television. And I totally understand that. Now, having kids with phones, all I'm doing is trying to think about what can I distract you with so that you're not looking at a screen.
I wish my children would watch television. I wish they would just sit and watch a movie. They won't. They just want to be on screens.
Well, it was our equivalent screen, right?
Yes,
and
but
the
screen seems
television,
so much
let's be
worse.
honest, but it was terrible. The TV was terrible. Like they could at least access like quality viewing. If you were like home on a school holiday on what day, there was like what Days of Your Lives and The Bold and the Beautiful.
Oh my God.
It was terrible television. But I think what was so interesting was we were always in a work environment, and it was say yes to everything. You never know what you'll learn. You never know what that opportunity will teach you. And I think that like that school of life, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I didn't know, but I kept on saying yes, and I kept on being curious, and I kept on just discovering. And I think those are the things, and hard work, like it was always about, we did I think it was probably, 8 till 6 or whatever, like that would have been a day for mum, or, whether it was like 9 till 6. But we went and we were there the whole day, and we weren't there. You weren't allowed to be, there was no being on your phone. And we were out in the stores, we were doing security tags, we were going to the bank, going to the post office, setting up transfers, putting price tags on garments. There's a lot of physical things that you could do, and that was really fantastic. And it's so funny because I have these friends that, whether they're like great swimmers or great skiers or great tennis players, and I'm like, wow, where did you learn that? And they're like, oh, my family, we all went swimming at 4 a.m. and we all did and I realized my training, when some people, that was their like family training. Our training was work. And I think when you actually have, we all have quite a constitution for it, you can find the enjoyment in it, you can find the energy, you can find the connection, and you can always find curiosity. I'm never bored. I don't have a gene. There's too many things, too many moving parts to anything you're doing to be bored about it. It's like, how would I do this process better in the next time? What would be more efficient? How are we really looking at this? What is the problem here? How could I solve it for you?
Constantly, looking at how you can.
Looking
curiosity,
at what you can
right?
do. Yeah.
Coming up, Bianca shares what she's learned after 18 years of her brand. Your mother rarely told you what to do, but she taught you through her actions, as you've just spoken about, to work hard and be fiercely independent, and also to find joy in your work, which is just such an important lesson. What did you only fully understand about your mum after becoming a mother and a businesswoman yourself?
I think I was really lucky because mum had given me this example that meant that whatever I did, and this might sound strange, but whatever I did, it was more than what my mum did. Because, at that point in her life and in society's life, if you were a career woman, you had to be a career man. And that meant that your children didn't exist. In all stages of life, you acted like a male. So you didn't talk about your kids. You certainly would never leave work because one of them was sick. All of the rules were living in a man's world. And I think what I learned was that you can do what you love and be a good mum. And because whatever I did was more than what my mum did, it was this amazing liberation because I knew that I was loved and I came out okay. And I really, there were lots of times where, mum wasn't there. And it taught me so many things, from I can find a solution to who else, as kids, we helped each other, the 3 siblings. We'd rely on each other a lot. But we also just, we were cooking meals from the age of 9 for dinner. I knew how to do a hem on my pants. We worked out how to do everything. And my kids, when they started school, they walked to school and I didn't drop them every day. And then they caught the train to the city and they were like, well, but everyone else gets dropped and it's like, I understand they do, but you're going to be fine. You can do this. And they have this sense of independence and strength that I suppose I hadn't realized was just this huge gift that my mum had given me at the time, that I knew I could do everything. Lots of people only learn how to cook or clean or everything when they left home. And we were well versed in that by 12. We were doing it all. So that
really is a gift.
It is. It's a total gift because everyone would say to me, oh, whatever I do, it's less than what my mum did for me. Are my kids going to be okay? And I was like, whatever I do is more than what my mum did for me. I know my kids are going to be okay because I'm okay. So that, there's always a sense of, you do miss out on things. I can't say that I went back to work when my kids were 6 weeks old, and that was tough. And there are moments I missed that if I had stayed home, I wouldn't have missed. And I can't ever change that. And, people would say, aren't you going to regret that you, missed out on these moments in life? And I think you can be cognizant that you missed out on those moments in life, but you can also be committed to more than that. Because in fashion, if I didn't go back, you're out. You really can't. It's not particularly when you have your own label, you can't get out and go back in. You know, it's hard enough to start a label. It's hard enough to get it going. But to walk away from it is just, you can't get back into it and build all those dimensions again. So for me, I had to believe I could be a good mum and do what I loved. And I was like, you know what? Whether I have girls or boys, I am teaching them they can do what they love and be a good parent. And if they're a boy, they're learning that their partner can do that. And if they're a girl, they're learning that that they can do that. And that's the biggest gift I can give them.
How have you dealt with guilt? Because I feel guilt all the time. I go pretty easy on myself these days in terms of like pushing that guilt away when it comes into my mind. But I do feel guilty because I'll say, oh, you're going to work again. How come you're not on holidays? For example, at school holidays at the moment. How do you personally deal with any guilt that creeps in, or do you not even give it time?
I'm definitely the school of vulnerability. And that's probably, when you were saying, what did you teach your mum teach you about work? Like my mum was very strong and she was very, she had to lead like a man in a man's world. She was the first woman on the board of Woolmark. She was the first woman on the board, I think, of Westfield when she joined. She was like one of, I think she might have been the first woman, or she was one of two on the board of McDonald's. She really was breaking ground and there were rules about how a woman had to behave and to not be treated, to be treated as an equal. You came from a male rule book. And so, and that suited Mum very well. She was very strong. She was very clear. She was very dynamic, but also she held that kind of force that I think, we talk about women as nurturing, and there's got to be, there's a fierceness that I think it's Jungian, where it's like you have nurturing, fierceness and playfulness, and you have to hold the three, and you think about those three. And I thought about it a lot, like I think women are taught a lot about nurturing. Men are taught a lot about, like, a male is assertive, they're successful, they're ambitious. Those terms aren't used as favorably for women, unfortunately. There are a whole plethora that I don't need to talk about terms for women who are determined. They're bossy. They never call a man bossy, but they call a woman bossy. Why is that? Because she's the boss? What's wrong about her
Well,
being
call
like a leader?
Ambitious, but there's negative connotations to that ambition.
And I think that it's just, she had a single-mindedness about that. And I think where I feel I really learned from, like you have to show a strength and you have to show a leadership, but I have more vulnerability, and I know, I was like, oh, Mom, I'm not like you, and I'm not like Allegra, and I'm not like Dad. I'm quite different to everyone. And she's like, the only person you can be is you. And you've just got to be true to that. I did this one collection actually when I just had my kids, my first son, Dominic, and it was a disaster. And my mum turned to me and she's like, what happened? And I said, oh, well, I just had a baby. And I was like, my buyer said they needed this. And I thought, you wanted that. And she's like, but what did you want? And I was like, oh, well, I just wanted it to work and I didn't really know. And she's like, oh, well, you've always got to do what you see. And I was like, okay. So finding that lesson about what you see. But back to mother guilt. I think for mother guilt, one of the things I had to do to help myself was surround myself by some people who were real, champions or cheerleaders of you. And I did have to, like, unfortunately know that when I was feeling really guilty, I would talk to people who were struggling with the same challenges of balancing work and kids. And it didn't matter if those were men or women, I had some guy friends that I would talk about that they were struggling not being there with their kids, and they felt, that they were missing out. And I would talk to some females, but generally connecting to people who were struggling with the same thing really helped me. So I think that, that, and having a community, I think I was quite lucky because so my partner, he was the primary carer, and he had this I worked 4 days a week and he worked 2 days a week with our first, which meant, okay, the kids are just with one of us for 4 days of the week. And then we had this friend who wasn't working and we said, do you want to look after our kid? And did. So it felt like a really lovely thing. And then they were in a family daycare that was around the corner. But seeing how my kids built these relationships and these connections with other people, like I really had to hold it into, well, what are you teaching them? You're teaching them that they're comfortable with lots of people, not just you. You're teaching them that they can build these really important bonds, and there are these whole groups of people that care about them deeply. You're also teaching them that a lot of people can understand them. How do they express themselves by someone who doesn't know them, maybe as well as you can? And you're also teaching them how to read other people and read cues. So it was the long game. I had to really, the mother guilt, and it always will be there. It had to be committed into the long game. What do you want them to be as an adult, rather than what experience do you want this 1-year-old to have? I can't make this 1-year-old not cry if I go to work and they've hit that like massive attachment phase, and it's devastating. And you just, you go, okay, I'm holding on to the 20-year-old right now, or the 30-year-old that has kids, and, they know what it's like to, support on that cycle, and that you can feel very loved and feel very and not be there all the time. Like it is a truth that you aren't there all the time.
But kids can still feel very loved.
Yeah, and they can still. And my poor kids, I'm literally like, do you feel really loved? I was like, I just need to know. And they're like, yes, Mom, I feel really loved. It's like, okay, cool. And I'm like, I know I'm working on it. Do you feel really loved? I know.
It's literally now my girls can text message. I'm like, I love you, like I'm so needy. I love you so much. Like just constantly. I think I tell them like 100 times a day.
Oh, I'm ridiculous. I have this. My youngest son, Florian, he came up with a phrase that wasn't ours, and he says, love you with all my heart forever and ever.
Oh,
and I'm like,
so gorgeous.
That's so amazing. And I just, we use it all now, but it's his phrase. And I was just like, well, that kid, because he was quite sick as a kid, and with the second, it's really hard because when you're with them, you're with two of them, and you don't get that even like concentrated day where you just get to like smother yourself in this like delicious baby, because you're dealing also with a wonderful 3-year-old, but it's it's more divided. And my other trick was, well, business was the first child, and when you have 3 children, you don't ever think that they're loved less just because there are 3 of them. You just think that they're all loved, but they know that they don't, they're not the only thing that you're loving at any, or managing, or balancing at any point in time. And I was just always like, okay, so there are 3. I always wanted to have 3, and I did ended up having 3. One just was fashion business, and the other 2 were beautiful boys.
A namesake fashion brand. On that brand, you agreed to 1 season, 3 months and 20 pieces, and that you would leave if the collection failed to sell.
Yes.
Did that arrangement feel empowering or terrifying, or just necessary for you to believe that you had earned your place?
Well, it's really important for me. So I went and worked overseas for 4 years because for me it was really important to work in a place where no one knew who my mum was, no one knew who I was, no one even knew the school I went to. And if I could just by, hard work and determination and, commitment, show that I had something and get a job and support myself as well, I could prove to myself that I had a value and I had something to add. And if that was in a place, like I was in Paris, and it's a pretty competitive world there, if I could prove that in Paris, then I was like, okay, then I've got something. It was just, that was what I needed, that existed completely outside of the context of my mum. So coming back to work for mum, it was a wrestle. Like I was actually, the business I worked for, Martin Sitbon, went bankrupt, and it was after September 11 and the Americans weren't traveling, and the bottom fell out of the French fashion industry because the American tourists were like one of their key markets, and was pre-online shopping, if we can imagine that these days. So, if you didn't go to Barrister by Christian Dior of this collection or Louis Vuitton or all those incredible brands, they didn't have amazing flagship stores. They didn't have huge distribution. This is all post to, like, I was there 2000 to 2003, and it was all post the massive kind of explosion of the big French multinationals. So it was a time I was going for jobs with other companies, and my mum had said, oh, well, you gave everyone a go, but what about me? And she had actually had 4 young designers, like, over the time I'd been away, one each year for 4 years, and it hadn't worked out. And I was like, well, if it hasn't worked out for them and then it doesn't work out for me, it's life. It's not that I'm not right. She's tried these. And so I was like, okay, well, this has to be about the business, and this has to be right for the business. And we have to find a way that it isn't about her approval of me.
Yes.
That it is just, it's creative, right? So everything is so subjective, and I needed to make it less subjective. And what's less subjective than the client? If the customer wants it and buys it, then it has a place. And and my mum didn't buy the collection. The buyer bought the collection. She would say, I would present a list, like a gamut of designs, and she'd say more this, less that. And then I would present it to the buyer. I would work with the design room manager, building all the patterns, and I was a pattern maker as well. So I really had a lot of people that I, like, on a day-to-day basis. I wasn't working with her, and that was really important. And to have a really clear, this has merit or this doesn't work. It's like 3 months, we both try, and the market decides, was just for me the clearest and kindest thing for both of us, to feel like the business and the market was deciding. It wasn't about her or me.
And you must have thought about working together in the past. There must have been discussions.
Not for me. I'm like, I didn't know I was going to work in fashion. I'm really not competitive, and my family's really competitive. Like, it doesn't matter if it's tennis or cards or
who
fun
always
facts.
won? Who won?
Never me. Like, I was like, no. Oh, my sister is like, she'd be like, race you up the stairs, and I was like, you're going to win. You're faster than me. I'm fine with that. And she's like, no, come on. And everyone in my family is fiercely competitive, and I just don't have that gene. I think I learned at a young age. I was like, I can do my best, and that is what I can hold myself to. So let's just focus on my best. And I can't read Middlemarch at 10, which my sister did, and I don't. I mean, Mum had a huge life, but she had already had a huge life before we came on the scene.
Yeah.
So it was very obvious to me, like they were very, very big characters that I could tell. My mum would walk through an office of women, and the way that they, I saw this from 9. She would walk through. There were like 20, 25, 30 people, and she would be going from this to that to that to this to then this lunch and then this info, like that kind of thing. You don't usually see, your parents in that way. And I just knew what they represented, and Dad was in politics, and then he was in law and standing up in a court, and they were very
dynamic.
Very dynamic, very, very powerful figures from a really young age for a lot of people. I could see the gaze of others. I'm probably less like, it's not that I knew every award they won or everything, but you can tell how people regard people. And I was like, I can't ask to be on that stage, of that level of regard. I can just be me.
Launching your own business, so stepping away from working for the brand Carla Zampatti. Tell me about that decision to launch a namesake brand.
Well, it was really interesting because, again, and maybe it's so funny because some people are like, I decided this and this and this and this, and that's not me at all. So in the way that I hadn't decided to work with Mum, I also hadn't decided to have my own label. What happened in the business was we found that the customers, we had put a white Carla Zampatti label on my pieces, and Mum had the black with gold writing. And the customers had been like starting to want, like, I developed a bit of a following. It had a different dynamic and a different sensibility. The clothes, there was more organic drape. There was more like Mum, I will always say, is a black and white kind of very graphic color palette, and I'm kind of in the tertiaries. Mum's is always like it's very sharp, like there's a strong shoulder and a nip waist and a silhouette to it, and mine, it's got more of this kind of organic way that it drapes around you. So that sensitivity or sensibility people were attracted to, and it eventually just got too big for the business and was like, oh, they want more, but it's not going to fit in the stores. And that where it was like, oh, okay, it needs its own space. It's ready to be a brand. And I remember at the time, I'd always known my aesthetic. I was always, Mum would be like, why don't you wear it like this? And I'd be like, I'd rather wear it like that. So she wore the pants, I wore the skirts. I would always wear the flowy things. She'd always wear the structured things. I always had mad hair. Like my mum has this hair, but she, not
Really?
since, yes, I can show you a photo of
gosh.
Mum with mad curly hair, but everyone knew her the perfectly like coiffed straight hair. And she was always like, you should blow dry your hair straight. And I was like, no, I like my hair. Like I've always had like this wild, like I love nature. And it's all those things I'm trying to capture in clothing, the organic spirit and the form and the body and the movement. And so for me, it was always natural that it had a different space, but did it have enough space to be its own thing? Like, again, I never started out with that intention. It was just to do the best at what I was. And so I did the best I was. And then it was like, okay, no, it's got its own space. And that was really a moment where, again, I think I had the confidence to do it and the business had the confidence to do it because the customer wanted it. And again, like coming from that commerce, like who knows with creativity? You could be the Van Gogh who, is the most brilliant artist and painter that goes down in time, but is never recognized in their life. And I'm not saying I'm Van Gogh, but I'm just saying there are amazing creatives out there that for whatever reason don't resonate at that particular time in that particular world. Or you can be the Picasso who, was picked up from the moment that he and was revered and, celebrated. And I love both of those artists and don't see any of their journey as better or worse or any of their work as better or worse. And that's where it's like, well, my work may have a space in this environment or it doesn't, but, I'll just be me and see what that leads to. So it was an amazing moment when, I feel very lucky, genuinely, like I even feel my heart beating now, where it's like, oh no, people think they're interested in giving you a space, like in this marketplace, in their lives, in their wardrobes, in their worlds. They're interested in inhabiting.
Because self-doubt is such a big part of creativity. Like when you're a creative person, like it's confidence comes and goes. Did you feel confident in that moment?
No. I don't. I think it's really interesting. People talk about confidence and someone said to me, oh, you're really confident. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, well, you always just do you. And I was like, oh, I didn't ever think that meant I was confident. I'm clear that I can only do me. Like I don't feel me if I have straight hair. I don't feel me if I wear a strong pantsuit. Like I know,
so say those things.
I have a sense of what is me.
What is you? Because say our mothers. So say your mum. I'm thinking about my mum as well. She'd be like, darling, wear your hair straight or wear that. And it takes a lot to say to your mum, no, mum, I want to, wear my hair curly or.
For me, that wasn't ever hard. And that's maybe just because I literally, there are some people who, I suppose you're very sensory and you're very kind of connected to how you, how sentient how being and how you take in life. Like when I wore a pair of pants, I felt constricted. When I wore a skirt, I felt free. Good. I loved dance and ballet. When I had my hair out and curly, it's always been about freedom, liberation, just movement for me. And everything that when things impinge my movement, whether they be a slim pair of pants or a tight jacket or straight hair, I don't feel free. And I've always needed to have I'm gestural and alone. I just can't do another version. So when Mum was like, oh, why don't you wear those pants? I was like, because they won't feel good. It's like, people talk about,
Yes.
oh, my kids can't put on these socks that have seams in them. I've never had the seam sock problem. But there are things that I'm just like, it just doesn't feel me. And I have such a strong sense of, does that feel me or not?
And also with fashion, there's nothing worse than when you're wearing an outfit that doesn't feel like you. Like you just feel so uncomfortable.
And it's hilarious because it could be an outfit you even wore 3 days ago. Like I never know what I'm going to feel like until I wake up that morning. And I don't know if I'm going to feel like I want my hair out. Even this morning I was like, I want my hair out, but I think we'll look more contained with this jacket. And I was like, I just don't care. I just feel like I want my hair out today. It's just what I feel like. So it's really interesting. But then a day before you could have felt good in that outfit. And then today it just doesn't feel right. Like it even changes. There's such a wax and wane to how you feel, well, how I feel on any particular day. Like my signature changes. Banks call me up and say like, can you please like have a more consistent signature? My handwriting changes, my signature changes, my hair changes, my outfit changes. Like sometimes I can do like, I'm like, oh, I want to be like colorful and free and floaty. And another day it kind of wants to be more, I don't know, like linear and sculptural. And I don't know, I feel really lucky to need to have so much to express. But I've never been able to like that. I've never been able to hold that in. And so I suppose that I will just call it like this live wire to this like yes, no kind of button in my body has probably been my confidence. It's just like, no, I can't do that. So it just doesn't feel right for me.
I am loving this chat with Bianca Spender. That was part 1 of our chat. Coming up in part 2, Bianca is going to share when she feels most creative and how she wants her clothes to make women feel. You'll find part 2 wherever you're listening or watching this episode. It's in your feed now. And for more stories of style and substance from Marie Claire, make sure to follow You're Gonna Want to Hear This on your favourite podcast app. And if you prefer to watch in high def, you can subscribe to Marie Claire's YouTube channel. That way you will never miss an episode.